So, let's start with a simple question. Why the moon? What makes it the next strategic frontier? Who wants to start? Please take the microphone. Yes.
I assume it's working? Yes. Okay, good. Well, in part, why the moon? Because I guess I will start by saying Earth orbit is very useful. We are seeing the last panel discussed, being in Earth orbit is very useful.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's very useful for human beings to be in Earth orbit. We've been spending most of the last 60 years replicating what Yuri Gagarin and John Glenn did over and over and over. I'm not sure that is getting us much. The next place you can go is the moon, and after that Mars, and after that the destinations thin out pretty badly. So if we're talking about using space for humankind, we're going to have to learn to go beyond Earth orbit, and the moon is the next place.
That's for sure. What do you think? Why the moon?
I think that it's just a small part of that decision is really ours, because if others are there and saying, okay, we have now what the Germans usually do when they go to the Mediterranean Sea. I've put my Handtuch here, so I'm here, I will stay. Yes. I'm pretty convinced that Europe or the Western world, and of course in Europe and in the Western world, Germany is, when it comes to our values and to our democracy, is a lead nation. And I guess not only that the moon is very interesting for science and that mankind should always stay curious and go where we not really have been, and we not really have been a long time to the moon. If others go there, and we are not so sure that they take care of the surface of the moon and also of the strategic dimension of the moon as we want them to do, then it's always better to also go there and not stay on the side and just have good comments.
Would you also drop your towel at 5 a.m. in the morning on the moon to protect that?
Well, I'm glad there are some really learned colleagues here, as aerospace colleagues, that are better qualified to talk about the timing and the maturity and the reasons for going to the moon. Well, all I can say is that from a perspective of a classic industrial player, that's what I consider my company Linde to be. We're a global leader in industrial gases, advanced cryogenics, and process engineering. So all of those capabilities are relevant to build a lunar infrastructure. So in that sense, it's a very exciting prospect for us.
And for your industry, from Linde now, like, what can you learn from the moon?
Well, we can learn from the moon that there are things out there that would expand our horizon economically. I mean, we're talking about the next economic and strategic frontier. And in terms of economics, it seems like a very exciting prospect to use the lunar perspective, the lunar location, and the lunar resources. So one of our products, for instance, is helium. And we know that lunar atmosphere, the lack of atmosphere more specifically, is very conducive to producing larger concentrations, for instance, of helium-3, which is a very sought-after molecule on Earth, isotope on Earth. So those prospects are all very appealing to us as an industrial gas player.
That's exciting data to collect there. And Mr. Griffin, if the moon is the next industrial hub, what would be the first applications there? The microphone? Yep.
Of course. Well, since my partner here is in industrial gases, I will say that we talk about using space and exploring and in the long run settling space. I have many times given speeches where I've said that I believe that in the year 3000 instead of 2000 that the space economy will dwarf the Earth economy because human beings are going to learn to use the resources that are out there. One of the most important of those for spacecraft propulsion and other things is oxygen. And something like, depending on where you are, 15 to 40% of the lunar crust is oxygen, and a large chunk of it is aluminum. So those are two very useful elements. So I would, if I had to guess what the future was and put my own money on it, I would say extraction of oxygen, extraction of aluminum, and using those to build from there.
That's interesting. You want to jump on that?
I need to.
Yeah, you need to, I know.
That was a nice segue. So obviously, Linde has a lot of experience, decades of experience of, first of all, developing and then enabling infrastructure that that exists in very harsh and extreme environments. So that's one thing that we can bring to the table. The other thing is, of course, our experience with gas separation, liquefaction, and storage. All of that is relevant to building an infrastructure that will, oxygen and hydrogen infrastructure, for instance, for lunar life support systems, energy systems, and propulsion. So there's a good connection there.
And Ms. van der Recke, what would be your first application from with the moon?
So for a space company, it is like we can do everything everywhere. I guess a big goal when we really want to bring mankind back to the moon to stay, we have to create something that is not this is sustainable, and therefore I think the big goal is to find players from out of the typical space bubble. That say, okay, there is something that we can establish. And therefore, I'm very happy that we talk with Linde, that we talk with so many other companies and industries represented here at the BDE. Because I'm pretty sure that, so today we really don't know what to find there, because the moon is still it's very close to us, but there's much research to do. And I'm not so sure what the first application will be. I think we have to really find a place where we can say this is a good place where we can land and where we can also launch again. Because if you want to bring stuff back from the moon, it's always good if you can start from there. And we have to find that. There are many challenges waiting for us. So
is this the most relevant challenge right now, or what would you say is this the most important challenge you're facing?
I think that the lunar environment is not so easy to deal with. I think that my Griffin can go a little bit more into detail on that, but just if we talk about the lunar night, so at least 2 weeks it's pretty cold and no sun, and but not so easy to survive. But on the other hand side, we didn't sign up for easy, and therefore I think it's time to go back to the moon, and we have to find partners that are willing to say, okay, we are maybe not originally from the space bubble, but we think that we can do something there, and then this is our job to help them to bring their business idea and their application to the moon.
But so, Mr. Griffin, is the moon probably at some point a place where we as humans could, survive somehow? Like, how can we create a place, a room at the moon where we can collect all our data, collect everything we need from it?
Well,
yes.
It's hard to get to the moon.
Yeah.
But being there, I'm not certain is any harder than being in Antarctica and wintering over for months at a time in the cold and the dark. The moon's a very tough place from what we have learned. But, frankly, the spread of humans across the Earth, instead of the Great Rift Valley of Africa, says that somehow we have figured out how to live in places that were initially difficult, and we will do so again.
True. Yeah.
I'm just not willing to accept a future in which humans are confined to the Earth.
Ms. van der Recke, the industry can prepare, but without the right political framework, it won't work. So what is the framework we need? We don't only need the room, we need, to create a place to stay there. What is the framework we need to make it easier to have access to all the data we have there?
I think from today's perspective, it's maybe a chance that we do not really have too many regulations yet. But everybody knows how especially Europe and maybe also especially Germany reacts on these kinds of situations. Oh, there's something that we can regulate. Let's do that first. Maybe we can find some problems. Maybe we can find some risks. I think that the political framework. So first of all, we have now in Germany a coalition and the government that is really willing to do something. So they have signed up for investing in space and not only putting money into space to make a good business case, but taking the chance that international politics and partnerships, you have to do something together. It's not like only writing letters and convincing each other about friendship, but you have to do something together, and therefore space has always been a very, very good thing to do together. For example, the International Space Station is one of the very big signs of freedom and international cooperation. And of course, going back to the moon, so the Artemis programs, the Artemis Accords, that's the core, saying if we want to go back to the moon as mankind, we do that together. So I guess that the Artemis Accords and the Moon Treaty, they give kind of a regulatory framework and also a policy framework. I'm not so sure if it's really necessary to create more paper around this. On the other hand side, we know how political decision-making processes work, and this is based on paperwork, so I hope that we find a good way in the middle. But I think that in Germany right now, and also this is something that our space minister, she said in the morning, she said we have not only a look on the business case and on results, but space has always been something we have to create some dreams, we have to do some communication, we have to convince also society that this is something that is important for our future. We have to find out what is out there. And I think this is a very good step, and if we have that goal together, then it's easier than we have the goal, how can we regulate something that we have a very good political framework to do?
Yeah, I see that. Mr. Hunfeld, what do you think is the biggest challenge? Is that solved by a good political framework, or what else do we need?
Yeah, interesting sort of entry point into this discussion, talking about the framework and the legal framework conditions first before talking about creating solutions, I would rather start with, what do we need to unlock this huge potential that the moon is offering? So I guess maybe, I don't know, 3 things, and these have been talked about in previous sessions. So investment, I guess, is number 1. Number 2 is partnerships, and number 3 is, I would mention standards. So financial engagement, Germany will need to prioritize investment in dual-use technologies, and by those I mean, of course, those that serve both terrestrial and lunar and space markets. And we are actually actively tracking funding opportunities already that will help accelerate technology transfer and readiness for lunar deployment. Secondly, you need very robust partnerships between government, industry, and smaller businesses, startups, and the research community, of course. And we are really offering and eager to offer to those collaborations not only our technical expertise, but also the industrial scale. This has been mentioned. I think Sabine mentioned it earlier. You need industry also to provide the infrastructure and the capabilities to scale whatever you are inventing. And we are ready to do that. And thirdly, I mentioned the standards. So standards, early decisions on standards for resource utilization on the moon or for environmental stewardship, safety will shape the lunar economy. So we are a company that is, of course, been involved for decades in setting up and meeting those very harsh and strict standards for safety and quality on Earth. And I think that positions us also well to define the best standards for the Moon.
Let's continue to talk about standards, Mr. Griffin. What are the standards we need in your opinion? Have they all been mentioned already?
Well, there are a number of them. It's a little bit like, I'm going to use an analogy, it's a little bit like air traffic control. It's really not a good idea to have navigation systems that differ every time you cross a border, or you can't change languages every time you cross a border, and you can't use one kind of jet fuel in one country and another kind of jet fuel in another country, because then no plane can take off after it lands, and so on.
Yeah. I
don't want to overdraw the analogy, but we need to. We have today. We have Galileo, and we have the U.S. GPS among free world nations. We are going to need to extend that kind of navigation out to the Moon and then later beyond. It's not going to be helpful if everyone has their own standard. We need communications protocols. I, of course, remember when there was no such thing as a cell phone, but today, this is what happens when you get really old.
I remember that too. So.
Yes. So today, I mean, yesterday I flew from United States to Munich and then to Berlin, and every city that I'm in, I turn my phone on and it works.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, that's because of the profit motive of the various telecommunications companies working together, deciding that I have no idea who in Germany is furnishing cell service, but somebody in Germany and somebody in the United States decided it was better for each of them to allow me to communicate in each country than to say, no, you can't communicate when you cross this border, because then nobody makes any money. So we need common communications protocols, common navigation protocols, common agreements on what kinds of fuels will be put in fuel depots in the future, those sorts of things, if that makes sense to you.
Well, yeah, in parts, yes. And then I think about, like, how can we ever have traffic rules, like, globally, for example? I mean, in England and in Germany, we already have different ones. Like, how can we ever align on something there?
Let me answer.
Just an interjection, very short one. I think it's about getting there early. Being there and starting early and setting the standards. I mean, I guess that's
being the first
part of the discussion of today. Is this the right time now? Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? And I think the answer should be yes in this case.
I didn't want to say this, but my colleague has gone first, so I'll be a blunt American and say it's about first to market.
Yeah, being the first. Yeah.
If you're the first, you set the standards.
That's for sure. And then just one follow-up on that. Like, can we have the same traffic rules also for Mars and Moon, or is that differentiating?
I think all that is yet to be seen. But here's what I can guarantee. If the Western nations stay home and watch China pioneer the Moon and the solar system, I can guarantee you that we will not be happy with the result.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say China, I should bluntly say the Chinese Communist Party. They do not wish us well. About every other day, the president of Xi Jinping stands up and says that the Western democracies are old and decadent and not fit for the future, or similar things. So we have adversaries. Despite the discord between the Western democracies, we have more in common than apart, and we should recognize that. And we have adversaries. But we have people out there who really don't like us, and they're telling us that. So when someone says that they don't like you, maybe you should believe them.
Well, maybe enemy is the first step towards friendship. So China should not lead in Mr. Griffin's opinion, but we should be the first. What would you think? What is the best possible? And now let's have our closing round, because we're running out of time. But what would your best possible outcome be towards the moon and our exploration from Earth?
So maybe I can finish with what I have started with. So I think pretty much my first sentence was I'm really convinced that Europe and the Western world, we should now, and now means not in 10 years, now, go back to the moon. And Germany is very well prepared to be a lead nation in that endeavor, because we want to establish, maybe rules is not the right word, but as we agree, is you can only live the values and establish values and make sure and clear how sustainability can be done on the moon or somewhere else in space if you are there. It's not like you cannot stay on Earth and try to set the rules, because others go there and they make the rules, and therefore we have to go now.
Yeah. Well, that's a good call to action. Gentlemen, what would be the best possible case for you?
Well, I think since we've been invited by the BDI and we're in Germany, I would say that Germany has a big legacy and history of engineering excellence. It has still a very strong industrial base. And I just would wish German innovation to be at the heart of lunar infrastructure. Full stop.
I love that. Yeah, please. Mr. Griffin, the closing words.
Well, my ideal future would be to recognize the truth that currently America is the closest to having the transportation system. Mm-hmm. To go to the moon, you need heavy lift vehicles, you need landers that can survive for extended periods of time, and a crew vehicle that can return people home through a very difficult flight environment. It is not that Europe doesn't have the technology to do that. They do. They, meaning the collection of countries, they do. But they have not invested in it. So for transportation, America is closest. However, that's about all we can afford to do. And if you're going to do anything useful on the moon, you need habitats, you need communication, you need navigation, you need resource extraction, you need life support. Frankly, you need nuclear power, for which the United States has fallen behind.
Yeah.
I don't really want to try to figure out how to live through the lunar night without nuclear power. It can be done, but it would be very difficult. We need so many things to make the moon a useful place that go beyond transportation. And Germany and Europe can, that is an open field. So if we can work together, we can both get there and come home, and then do useful things while we are there.
That's the word. Thank you so much. Thank you.